Good morning, Southern. Very nice to be with you this morning. I'm not sure if you two have a love-hate relationship with that opening music, but mine's now starting to err towards the hate than the love, but that's okay. It is a great promotional countdown wrap, much appreciated. And I hope you have had a good, do we call it Freedom Weekend? I don't feel especially free, except that we got to go out yesterday, and I'll tell you about that in a sec. But if you would like to put in the comments what you have done, whether it's a much needed haircut, which I'm getting tomorrow, much needed haircut, a visit with family, a trip to a local restaurant, please put it in the comments, because I think it's nice to hear what people are doing with their newfound freedom. Raph and I decided, even though it was drizzly, we would go into the Botanic Gardens in the city, and we just happened to get the last couple of seats at a pub near Fed Square as well. And it was a brilliant afternoon. It was really lovely. The dog really felt it because he was on his own for several hours, and I don't think he's been on his own since 2019. So that was a challenge for him, but pop it in the comments. Now, we are going to go straight to a Bible reading this morning, just to mix things up. And you will find there is someone very special to do that Bible reading. If you could bring that very special person from the backstage. Morning, Nicole.
Good morning, Sally. How are you?
I'm really well. What have you done with your new found freedom?
What have we done? Didn't do anything Friday night. Last night we went across to Moshe's sister's place over in Caulfield. So it was actually nice to drive further, because my life's still pretty much in 5 kilometre zone, a lot with work and all that. So, so we drove across there. We took our dogs because Moshe's sisters also got 2 dogs that they got last Christmas, like cavoodles. So it was a bit of a dog fest last night, bit of socialisation. The dogs loved it. I don't know, some people may have seen a video that Mosh put up where one of their dogs was in Hopper's face, so he just gently tapped the other dog in the face and gave a little high five.
Back off, Buster.
I'm watching the video and it makes me laugh anyway. So
that's good. That's really nice. And when you say Mosh's sister, a lot of people would remember Ali, because she was at Southern for quite a few years, wasn't she?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
so.
Very good. Yes. Well, it's very nice to see you. I'll just add what Kate Lording mentioned. Teenagers here for a swim and pizza on Friday night. It was the perfect weather for that.
Yes.
And now that you've got a swimming pool, Kate, that is amazingly good. So
not like ours, it's green.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, there's a work in progress. Now, you are going to read for us Luke 8:40 to 53. Are you good to go?
I am good to go. That's fine. All right. So now when
I'll go backstage, Nicole. See you later.
All right, you'll go backstage. Gosh, I get full screen. Woo. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to read from Luke chapter 8 there, verse 40. So now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother the teacher anymore." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just believe, and she will be healed." When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him, except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. "Stop wailing," Jesus said. "She is not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. Now, Sally said to verse 53. I had to 56 on my little message, but I'll stop there. And if I do need to read a couple more verses, I can.
Oh. Nicole, that is so like me to give you one piece of information and then give you another.
If I just heard you to 53, I'm like, oh, I better stop there.
Yeah, no, do the last 3 verses. I'll stay on screen.
Okay. But he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened.
Brilliant. We couldn't leave everyone in suspense as to whether the little girl was raised from the dead or not. That was an important part of the story. Thank you so much for reading that, Nicole. That is a great passage, and we'll be looking at that in a kind of a short devotion this morning. Cool. So next, what we've got coming up, and I'm keeping you on screen because it's a song from your crew. Right. It's one we did a couple of weeks ago. It is called As You Find Me, and I know we did it recently, but I think it's such an important song for our current topic. And as we think about the presence and compassion and gentleness of Jesus, finding us however he finds us, and particularly pertinent to this story, he finds this woman in dire circumstances. I thought, I think we'll do that one again. So thanks for recording it the first time, and we are looking forward to hearing it now. But thanks for reading that, Nicole.
You're welcome. Nice to see you all, even though I can't see you, but you can see me.
I've been strong and I've been broken within the moment. I've been faithful and I've been reckless at every bend. I've held everything together and watched it shatter. I've stood tall and I have crumbled in the same breath. I have wrestled and I have trembled towards surrender. Chased my heart adrift and drifted home again. Plundered blessing till I am desperate to find redemption. And every time I turn around, Lord, you're still there. I was found before I was lost. I was yours before I was not. Grace to spare for all my mistakes, and that just wrecks me. And I know body is still warm. Somehow you love me as you find me. You love me as you find me. You love me as you find me. You love me as you find me.
Absolutely beautiful. And as Lisa said, not Lisa said, but Lisa Watkins said, I'm so glad for this song sung by you again. And there are absolutely no guarantees that it won't be shown a third time. I think it's just so good for this current series. But also, Raf looked it up and played it in the car the other day. I'm sorry, but the Maynard version is 1,000 times better than the original. So I'm just going to put that out there and know that no one else will know that that's what I've said publicly. So it's all good.
That's on YouTube.
It is on YouTube. You're right. So I've got some announcements, but before I do, a couple of things that people have said they're doing. First of all, Darren said happy birthday to Richard Heath. So happy birthday, Richard Heath. Then Kate Griffiths talked about what she did in celebrating freedom. They went for a bike ride to St Kilda and a swim at Port Melbourne with an icicle emoji. So I'm assuming that even though it was Friday, that was probably pretty cool. And then Rosalba said, the family's coming for dinner tonight, cooking up a big, and I read Italian feast because that's the only thing that makes sense. But no, she said Indian. So I'm perplexed, Rosalba, completely perplexed. But I'm sure you'll do a great job. We, however, are having an Italian feast, might I say. Ben said amazing song, and Lisa agrees Maynard version is definitely the favourite. So thanks for all your input there, everyone. Announcements. This is AGM Sunday, which is not a catchy phrase, and I don't think is going to become a thing, but we do have our AGM. We will be finishing this service a little bit sooner, and that will take us to the AGM at 11:30. If you remember, please make sure you're there. It will be as short as we can make it. But with still making it meaningful. If you're not a member, you are welcome to attend, and the Zoom link is on the closed Facebook group that you're probably watching this on. If you can't find it, please let me know or let Alex know, and we will make sure you've got the link. As members, please make sure you have searched for Alex's email, which has your PIN code, and that will mean as a member you can vote. Members have to vote on different devices, but he'll unpack that during the meeting. Just bear in mind that you'll need a second device if you're watching from Zoom together. Now, in terms of gatherings, we've sort of chatted about this, but it looks more certain that we will be able to meet face-to-face, hopefully November 14th, 5 p.m. So that's a Sunday at 5 o'clock. And I'm thinking, Raph and I were chatting about the other day, saying it would be so good to eat together. So I think let's just make that happen. It's a little bit more complex, but certainly not undoable. So I think more details to come because we have to firm up all those details. But looks like we'll be able to get together November 14th and probably December 12th. There may be more face-to-face gatherings, but that's the bare minimum for gathering and in person. Unfortunately, what that means is that if you're not fully vaccinated, you won't be able to attend, and that just about breaks my heart. So please have a chat with me if that's the situation you're in, because we want to make sure that there's some sense of inclusion despite not being able to attend face-to-face. That is it for announcements. We now have a fantastic and fabulous Kids Church talk, and that is by Tracy. This is a pre-recorded one, but you may yet get to see Tracy on Restream as well. But for now, enjoy this Kids Church talk.
One of the many incredible characteristics of Jesus is that he manages to see people. But not only see people, he sees the people that no one else sees. So you guys probably remember that story of Zacchaeus, the guy that used to collect taxes and money for people. And it seemed like he was a bit dodgy, and because of that, no one liked him, and he didn't have any friends, and Zacchaeus didn't even like himself. But who should walk by and out of a huge crowd manage to see Zacchaeus and see how lonely he was and how unhappy he was? Well, Jesus, of course. And what did Jesus do? He said to Zacchaeus, I want to go to your house. Your house. The person who no one likes, who no one has anything to do with. Jesus sees him out of a massive crowd and says, I want to go to your house. I want to have dinner with you. I want to spend time with you because I think you are significant. Because I think you are lovable. Zacchaeus could not believe it. This guy, Jesus, who everyone was talking about and following and listening to and was really seemingly popular, kind of famous, had chosen him out of a crowd to go to his house for dinner. Wow, amazing. The Bible says that God knows us so well and we are so unique that he even knows us when he even knew us when we were in our mummy's tummies. He knew us way back then when we were in our mum's tums. And not only that, he loves us so much that he knows how many hairs are on our head. How many hairs are on our head? Not just a few people. The Bible says he knows how many hairs are on everybody's heads. So I'm going to take you over to the bench now, and I have a little experiment to show you. And now you're going to see my finger because I'm just so good at this. So this is a little illustration to show you how God manages to see us. Even though there are so many people in the world, he manages to see us and understand us. So here we have some sakatars. Now, they all look the same. Pretty much. A little bit of different colour for each one. But I know that there is one of these sakatars that is different. So let's just turn them over and see, are there any sakatars that are different here? All look the same. All look the same. Oh my gosh. This one's different. This one has a happy face. And I knew that. I knew that there was one sakatar that was different from all the rest. And that's what God knows about us. He knows that even though there are many little girls and there are many little boys and so many people, God picks us out. He knows we're unique. He knows we're different because he created us and loves us. You are always seen by God. There is nothing that he doesn't know about you or understand about you. Just like he understood that Zacchaeus needed a friend, he understands us. See you guys. See you next time.
Tracy, Lisa nailed it. She said, love your storytelling skills, Tracy. That was lovely. And I've never called them sakatars in my life, but that song kept going through my head. Do you remember when they had the ad? I'm not going to sing it. No, I'm going to let that go, actually. But the storytelling on that was amazing. And when Tracy and I talked about that, doing a kids' church story and the story that I was going to bring, we decided that a woman with constant bleeding being healed by Jesus probably didn't make a great kids' church story. But I love the Zacchaeus one because the threads really tie together really well. So thank you for that. And just as a reminder, if you missed the Bible reading at the start, we're looking at the passage that where Jesus is walking along towards the home of someone whose child has died, and he gets touched by this woman who has had 12 years of constant gynecological problems, constant bleeding, and she's healed by Jesus. Now, we won't really be focusing on the fact that the Jairus' child is raised from the dead, although we'll mention it, but it's really this particular story of this woman that I think is worth looking at this morning and focusing on as we continue our series on the characteristics of Jesus and just the way that we can interact and be loved and seen by Jesus. And I think this story tells that really well. I think we need to understand in the context here of Luke, where we find the story, and it's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but it's in the context of miracles. So there's this idea that that all these miracles are pieced together in the book of Luke, culminating really in this raising from the dead, which has got to be the top of the pile in terms of spectacular miracles. And so the real point of the passage is about the miracle, but as much as that is the point, there are other parts of this that I think are important and worth looking at. So to take a quick review of what life would have been like for this woman who had this problem, this is unlikely to have been just some very simple woman's issue. This would have been an incredibly difficult health problem that this woman had to deal with. Constant bleeding would have meant, just physically speaking, there would have been an iron deficiency, just in the most basic form. That's how that likely would have unfolded. Now, if you've ever had an iron deficiency, you know that you have trouble concentrating, your energies are low, you get puffed out quickly. You'd probably be extremely fatigued and probably emotional. So that's just physical, but spiritually what that meant in her context is that she was constantly unclean. Women in that culture were unclean when they had their periods, but this would have been constantly unclean. That would have had huge implications for her in society. She was basically shunned. That's how this would have unfolded for her. So emotionally, that would have had a very big impact. We don't know whether she was married or unmarried. We don't know whether she had children. We don't know when this problem started for her or how old she was. But if she had a husband, anytime she just even reached out and touched his arm, that made him unclean for the day. To hug one of her children, if she had any, to hug a friend down the street, or to even go down the street, it had massive implications. Anyone coming close to her, being touched by her, would have been automatically unclean for the rest of the day. So it was a big deal. This is no small issue that this woman is coming to Jesus for. And no doubt she would have felt very rejected and very alone in that culture in which she lived. Even today, she would feel that way, but more so in that ancient culture. So it's a critical situation. And Luke doesn't say that she'd been to many doctors and they hadn't been able to heal her. Why is that? Why does Luke not mention that? Well, because he's a doctor and he's not going to pull down his own profession. But you'll see, I think it's in Mark, where it's very much no one can fix this problem. She's handed money out and no one's been able to fix it. But we know that nothing that she has tried has worked. And I know some of you have had concerning medical issues that you just feel like they're dragging on and on and on. And you probably can relate a little bit to what this woman is going through. For others of you, this could be that a relationship issue is going on and on and on, or a financial one, or you name it. Many of us struggle with problems that just don't seem to have an end. So you might well be able to relate to what this person is going through. So she touches the hem of his garment, and Raf's got a picture he'll put up for that. She touches the hem of his garment because she knows that will heal her. Now, some people take this as like a doctrinal statement, because we know that Jesus turns around, asks who touched him, and says, your faith has healed you. And some people say, oh, well, clearly, if you don't have enough faith, you won't be healed from X, Y, or Z. Now, the reality is, in that culture at that time, there were myths and legends and all sorts of strange beliefs. And one of them was that if a magic person with their magic clothing on got touched by someone, they could be healed. So this is really addressing more than just your faith has healed you. It's not that my clothes are magic. It's not this crazy belief that, like, standing under a ladder is unlucky, or crossing the path of a black cat. That's really the realm we're talking about. Jesus here is not so much saying it's crucial that you have faith, but rather, my clothes aren't magic. This is a miracle. And we know that through a whole series of other miracles Jesus performs, not the least of which is the next one, where no faith is required. The little girl has no faith because she has passed away. And no faith is required for that healing and that miracle to happen. So let's understand, as we see this woman, like slink through the crowd, trying not to be seen, touching the hem of Jesus' garment. The point of that story is not that we have to have faith to be healed. The point of that story is more about being seen by Jesus. This is a person who didn't even want to be seen because there was so much shame in being seen. When Nicole read out of a different version to what I have, and it said that the crowds were crushing around her. How many people, if they had have noticed this woman, would have looked down on her, told her off, yelled out in public saying, get away, because this is not a place she should have been. And yet here she is, desperate to touch the hem of Jesus' cloak, desperate for change in her life. And I wonder if you can relate to that. I wonder if you can relate to feeling despondent, feeling a lack of hope, and just feeling like you need to be able to reach out and touch Jesus. Sometimes Jesus chooses to heal and sometimes not. And we're not really talking about miracles today, but I want to say some of us have pleaded for miracles and haven't had them. I just want to acknowledge that and put that out there. I also want to acknowledge that miracles still do happen today. And that's something that in our current scientific culture, where we're very cynical about miracles, we need to understand that sometimes they do still happen. But the mystery of whether it will happen to you or to me remains just that. And so we find ourselves sometimes slinking up to Jesus, feeling very unworthy, feeling very broken, but still needing a touch from Jesus. Now, at that point where she touches the hem of his garment, where he turns around and asks who touched him, she very nervously acknowledges, yep, that was me. Because really what should have happened is that Jesus should have said, well, you're unclean and you should not have come near me. This was a faux pas on a very high level. And yet, like Jesus approaches us, like Jesus responds to us when we come to him in fear or shame or guilt or brokenness, he looks at her and he doesn't shun her. He calls her daughter. He through the healing, he shows that she's seen, that she belongs, that she has a place. And that's how Jesus responds to us. We had a friend at Southern many, many years ago, so you would have had to have been at Southern for a very long time to have met Marie. Marie came to Southern through Little Angels, and she was adorable and quirky and wonderful. And Marie had seen a lot of trauma in her life. And I remember her saying to me one day, Sally, there are days where my faith is not thriving. There are days when I know that I may not ever be the person I was before. There are times when I feel like I'm just managing to get through in my faith. And yet she said, this is what I picture when I feel like that. This is what I picture when I try and understand where I'm at with Jesus. If all I can do is reach out and touch the hem of his garment, I know everything will be okay. And I've never forgotten it, because she's so right. We're seen even when we're holding on to the hem of his garment. We have a place even when we feel displaced or lonely or afraid. And like Marie, we can say, despite everything else going on, even if I don't feel worthy or significant, I am. And in that thoughts about shepherding, Lisa talking about the shepherd who holds the face of the sheep, and Howard mentioned whispering in the ear of the sheep. That's Jesus to us. We don't have to be anybody special. We don't have to be approaching Jesus like that rich young ruler who came up and kind of boldly and confidently asked his questions. This woman could never have done that, but it didn't matter. She still had a place. She still received Jesus' grace. She was still called daughter. And so my encouragement to us today is to hold on. Hold on, despite anything and everything going on. Hold on even though the world feels completely upside down. Our hope is not found in government regulations or anything close to it. Our hope is found as we look into the eyes of Jesus and as we receive his daughter or son comment to us, or they, that we are seen and we belong. So hold on. So practically speaking, holding on is about talking to Jesus. Holding on is about reading your Bible. Yes, if you can, when you can. It is so helpful to get to know this Jesus who we love. Holding on is gathering with other Christians. How tricky has that been? But we do have some ability to do that now. And commit yourself to Jesus' care. And sometimes it's just waking up in the morning and saying, Jesus, I am holding on to the hem of your garment today, and allowing him to look you lovingly in the eye and show you his grace. So I hope that's something that you can manage this week, this month, for the remainder of this year. And when I thought about this story, the person who sprang to mind as someone with deep compassion, it was Tracy. And so she, even though she felt nervous about it, she said, I will come and have a chat with you at the end of the devotion. So welcome, Tracy. It's very good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
So I had a couple of questions, and let's just see how we go with the first one. My question is, what group in our society do you think can relate to the stigma that this person would have been under? As you thought about that, what do you think?
I think I would have to say emphatically, categorically, no argument against, it would have to be the poor. It would absolutely have to be the poor. And I'm not sure if people are aware of a former minister's comments this week about people who live in poverty, but she referred to them as can't take care of their children, uneducated. She referred to them as trolls, people that waste time in the system, villainous, idiotic, damaged, not very nice. Goes on and on. It's quite astonishing. And I think I was talking to a friend the other day, and she used the word povo, and I just wrinkled and shivered, and I thought, oh my gosh, when growing up, if people were poor, they weren't to be demonized or put down or judged. That it was sad. But I think our society has changed so dramatically that they are judged, and they are definitely the unseen.
Yeah, as expected, you nailed that, Tracy. That is So true. And even walking along yesterday in the city, classic place to find people who are struggling to find a place to live. The fact that, and I'm not even suggesting that everyone who we saw holding a hat in front of them was poor, because we don't know their circumstances, but that sense of not having a place and not being seen, the number of people who just walked by and literally turned their head because it was just too hard to look at, too hard to acknowledge. So even when there's not that higher level judgment, sometimes there's the lower level, I'm just not even going to acknowledge that that's an issue. Yeah.
When you talk to people that work with people who are homeless, one of the most precious things you can do is actually have a seat and have a conversation, so they feel seen, so they feel like these people aren't just walking by and trying to ignore me.
Yeah. And we actually saw that once yesterday. There was this guy who had taken the time to kneel down next to a person, and he was really struggling because he was his eyes were streaming, his nose was streaming because he obviously had hay fever, and he's trying to keep his mask on, and he's doing this. But I thought he's made the effort despite that, which is really lovely. Second question, and then there's a couple of comments from Lisa that I want to finish on. What practical things do you think we can do to support people who feel alone or on the fringes, whether it be from poverty or whether it's from some other situation? What are some practical things you think we can do?
I think you have to make yourself knowledgeable about who the unseen are. And I think the unseen, I mean, we know that there's an epidemic of loneliness, and we know especially that happens amongst the elderly, those who are widowed or lost their partner or something. And I think when we know who the unseen are, then there's no question about what we have to do. We have to get involved. Jesus, doesn't set up committees. He touches and speaks to and spends time with and loves those that are unseen. Yeah.
You've just encouraged me to drop round to someone's house tomorrow. There's a person who's kind of on the fringes of Southern who's never attended. It was a connection that Caleb would know of through St Arnaud, so it's a strange sort of connection, but we chat once a week, and I haven't been able to catch her on the phone, and you've just made me realise I probably need to check she's okay, because she lives on her own and she's in her 80s, and who knows. Now I'm worried, but that's okay. It's good to be worried, and it's good to be looking after each other, and whether that's your neighbour or whether that's anyone who Jesus brings to your mind, that's really important.
I think the other thing, Sally, that I just would want to say too is that it takes vulnerability to be seen. So if we want to be known, if we want to have friendships with people, you have to take that risk of vulnerability. And that vulnerability will bring the richness to the relationship.
Absolutely. And if you've ever had that like your heart's beating madly because you know that Jesus is calling you to speak to someone in some particular context, but you don't know how it's going to end up. You know that feeling where if you talk to a supermarket assistant, you know that you've got this context, it makes perfect sense. But if you just chat with someone on the street, it could go anywhere, and they might embarrass you, or they might say something that's so outside the square you won't know what to say. And that's that vulnerability that says, I'm going to do it anyway. So I guess that's the challenge for us, particularly as we start to come out of lockdown and we're out and about a bit more. Some of the unseen might be more seen. And I hope we can look with fresh eyes, not just to the obvious, because for those who live in or around Eltham, it's affluent, but there are people who are lonely. There are still people who are poor. There's all sorts of situations that we're going to see, hopefully with fresh eyes. So thank you for that. Just a couple of little things to finish with. Lisa mentioned it was prophesied that the Messiah would arise with healing in his wings. Fun fact, Jewish robes and shawl with tassels were referred to as wings. So that's a nice little tie-in. I really like that. And yeah, she also mentions it's an incredible story because she's healed physically, socially, emotionally, psychologically. I mean, this is an
It's
enormous
such an incredibly radical story. For starters, it's a story about a woman in ancient times. It's
a woman in ancient times, and we're talking about her gynecological problems like that. Yeah, that would have just been. But yeah, but it's mentioned. I love it. All right, thank you so much, Tracy. And because we need to wind up a little bit earlier because of our committee meeting, Jesus, do you think Jesus would have approved about having a members meeting and an AGM? Let's just say yes.
Go with it.
All right. It's also a great chance for some faces to be seen and voices to be heard because we're very limited in that. So let's go with that. I'm going to close in prayer if you're happy to stick around. Jesus, we are so thankful that we're seen, that we're loved, that you are the one who, when we reach out and even just touch the hem of your garment, we can experience an outpouring of your grace. And the core and the center of all of that is your death, your humiliation, and your victorious rising from the dead. We cling to you today. We thank you that we can do that in a world filled with complexity. We want to tell you that we love you and we give ourselves in surrender to you once again. Help us to have open eyes to see what you're doing in the world and how we can get on board with it. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Thanks everyone for joining. And we have a 15-minute break to go and get coffee, get a nibble of something, and please be on time. We will start on time and we will Russ hovering over the end stream. I'm feeling pressured.
Keep going.
We will see you in 15 minutes and look forward to seeing some faces of yours. See you later.